Hello and welcome to Spoil Your Baby. I'm Dr. Greer Kirschenbaum and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Rocío Zunini. Today we're going to talk about something that affects every parent-child relationship, and it's emotional contagion. Relatively new in study and really important for our relationships with our babies and each other. So I have an example of this from today. Last night, and yesterday, all day yesterday and last night, I was really overcome with a lot of sadness and anxiety related to, lots of things going on in my life and my friends' lives. And my son fully picked up on my emotional state and my brain state. He came to me in the morning and gave me a really, really big cuddle. And he said, Mama, let's do our morning song, our morning ritual. And this is something we hadn't done since the summertime. We used to sit on the grass outside, sing a song to kind of welcome the day, do a bit of back-to-back breathing, and say something we were grateful for. And so he could really tell I needed some emotional care. And he remembered this and he's like, let's do this today. He's like, but we can't go outside because it's snowy. So what should we do? And I was like, okay, let's do it inside. So we did our little ritual. And it really helped. It gave me that oxytocin, that connection, the grounding, all of these amazing things. And so it's incredible that he could just sense my state and became a little healer to me this morning. So I wanted to share that as, when we invest in our baby relationships when they're little, now that when childhood, they really understand a lot of these concepts and can actually lead them, which is really incredible. So, Rocio, do you want to help further explain emotional contagion?
Yeah, what a lovely story, Greer. And so emotional contagion is exactly what it sounds like. Emotions are contagious. So just like when we can catch a cold from someone, then you can catch their emotional states. And babies are more susceptible to this because they are constantly borrowing our nervous system so that they can be in equilibrium, right? So if we get stressed, they get stressed. There are even studies showing this now. There is a study, for example, where they brought moms and babies to the lab, and a group of moms were put through a stressful task where they had to give a speech in front of an audience that was non-responsive to them, like they were negatively reacting to them talking.
Yeah, public speaking is one of the most stress-inducing things for a lot of people.
Yeah. So researchers do this when they want to get people stressed out, they put them into a public speaking situation. And if they really want to stress them out, then they put three other researchers who are the audience, and they act they cross their arms, they frown, so these poor moms, they were really stressed. And they weren't with the babies. The babies were in another room with another caregiver. And then they were reunited with their babies. And what they found is that the heart rate of the babies was up. There was a change, similar to their mothers. And the more stressed the mothers were, the more stress the baby showed, or they show this sign of stress that you could actually measure. So yeah, babies are very susceptible to our emotional state.
Absolutely. And it makes total sense, right? They're learning about the world from us as their mom or dad or caregiver. And they're also doing something they're doing social referencing. So they're kind of looking to us to know, am I safe right now? Or is this situation stressful? And they learn that in the moment from us. And that's really vital information for them to understand. And so sometimes this is overwhelming for parents to hear at times, right? Because then they're sort of thinking, oh, like I have to always be calm or always be aware. And, we'll get into that a bit later, but that's not necessarily true, right? Our babies need us to be authentic, but yes, aware of our emotional state and, able to have some tools for regulation too. But we see this all the time, when we work with babies, right? We have a parent who might feel really overwhelmed by their baby, and they're in a stress state, their baby's in a stress state, they're trying to calm their baby, but they haven't calmed themselves first, and they're just trying and trying. And then they might pass baby to dad or pass baby to grandma. And that person who's calm and in a regulated state, they can soothe the baby very quickly, right? And that sometimes is very frustrating for moms. And I've been there. I know how that feels. But that's the reason, right? And like, I would wish for all moms to have someone like that around to help. But if not, we actually do need to calm ourselves, to regulate ourselves in order to regulate our babies, right? And we see the same thing for positive moods. We see when mom is, playful and engaging and joyful, that baby, if they're in, a state that's going to welcome that, they'll kind of magnify in their joy and their play as well.
Absolutely. There's also a part that is investigated, right? It's not just about the stress, but also about the other side, right? The pleasant emotions, they're amplified too by us when we are with our baby. And so, Greer, can you tell us actually what's happening in the brain during these moments?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's multiple brain systems working to coordinate us with our babies. And I think, the incredible phenomenon to note here is that we're, when we have a baby and we're deeply connected to them, we are essentially one organism in so many ways. We're really, really living life moment to moment with our babies, right? And our babies' experience. So the first system that works is a mirror neuron system. And that sort of activates when we observe others' emotions. There's also the limbic system, so our amygdala, which is sort of our fear and emotional processing center, that will also mirror brain states of those around us. And there's also the autonomic nervous system. So our physiological state, so our heartbeat, our pupil size, our breathing state. These are all kind of mirrored or contagious between us and our babies.
Yeah. And what about the prefrontal cortex? What's going on with that with the babies?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The prefrontal cortex, it helps regulate emotions, right? And it's very much developing and very, very vulnerable to the interactions that we have with babies, especially those really positive reactions and those positive interactions we have that we mentioned, right? When we are engaging them in play and serve and return, or what I call baby chats, that back-to-back or back and forth communication, that's really growing their prefrontal cortex to be able to regulate emotions later on as they grow up, which is really great. So in so many ways, we're actually taking our nervous system and teaching it to our baby in those early years, right?
I love that. Yes, essentially, yeah. So this is why it's very important to learn about how these things work, right? But this might make parents feel anxious, right? Because like, oh my God, does this mean I have to be calm all the time, right? So what can we tell parents about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to be authentic, and it's so important to have a range of emotions and have a range of stress around our babies. Otherwise they're just picking up. If we're trying to pretend like we're not, our babies are just picking that up anyway, because so much of this communication, the emotional contagion, our states are unconsciously communicated. So They're communicated to babies in the micro expressions in our face, the ones that we don't even control and we don't even actually see with our eyes. It's just an unconscious process that humans share between each other. Yeah. We can't control our heartbeat, our pupil size, our breathing rate, all of those also communicated, right? So authenticity is absolutely the answer. And being perfectly regulated all the time is not the goal either. It's really to be our authentic selves, to feel our huge range of emotions, our huge ranges of stress, but also to be adult about it, right? To be able to have a level of self-awareness of how we're doing and have a lot of tools to manage our emotions, I'll say, and manage our stress and learn to recover, as well. And this could be a learning process with our babies too. This reminds me of our retreat coming up.
Yes. So it's time to mention it now if you want, Greer.
Yeah. So I feel like, we hold an annual retreat every year where we bring guests in to give parents these exact tools that we're talking about, to build self-awareness, to build ways to manage your emotions, manage your relationships, manage your stress during this time. Because it's important for our own well-being as mothers, and it's also really important for our babies' well-being and their brain growth too.
Exactly. And the online retreat is coming up soon. And we're going to probably leave a link, right, for people to register.
Definitely.
Here in the notes.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's free.
Yeah.
But you can watch all the talks for free. And also you can, invest in having unlimited access too. So we'll definitely share that.
Yeah.
All right, Rocío, do you want to share a example of this? Sometimes the most stressful time of the day is often bedtime.
Yes.
Because we've been through the whole day. We're stressed. Tell us a little bit about how that might work with emotional contagion.
Bedtime. I've been there so many times. I'm still there, even with my 6-year-old. This is a time where this tends to happen, that we are rushing because we want our child to go to bed so that we can relax. And so we are rushing and feeling anxious, and the baby or child picks up on it, right? Through, like what Greer said, multiple channels, like your facial expressions, your micro facial expressions, even the way you're holding your baby, so that we get into this spiral, right? The parents' anxiety makes the baby more alert and anxious, which makes it harder for the baby to fall asleep, which then increases your anxiety because baby's not sleeping. So it's like, oh my God, I lost count of how many times I might have told my 5 or 6-year-old, like, you're still awake, like, and I know that I'm waiting for him to fall asleep, and then he'll be just like, after 20 minutes, ask me a question. I'm like, are you serious?
Oh yeah, you're like, oh gosh, we have to start from the beginning again.
Your wheels are turning when you should be like breathing to fall asleep, breathing like deeply, anyways.
Oh yeah.
So, but the good news is that we can make changes here. Like, Greer, tell us what we can do.
Yeah, we can use the emotional contagion in a positive way, right? And listen, what you just described was me last night.
See, it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. I was having big feelings yesterday, and I was just so excited for my son to go to sleep, and so I could, decompress, do a meditation, take care of myself a little bit. And so, I was short too. I was like, he's like, I'm thirsty. And I was like, okay, I'll get you some more water, on and on. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this still happening? And he fully could pick up on my mood. He completely knew. He completely knew. It's so, so obvious. So, I was there, and I also turned it around the same way I'm going to talk about it here, right? Yeah. We can get out of these. We don't have to believe all of our thoughts is the first tip, right? And the thoughts in that moment is, this bedtime's never going to end. They're never going to fall asleep. I'm not going to get my time to myself. And, it's such an important lesson in mental health and resilience for us to stop believing our thoughts. Most of our thoughts are not true. They're not always true, especially when we're activated and in a reactive kind of state, right? So noticing that is the self-awareness piece. Oh, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling like I want my kid to fall asleep so badly. I'm kind of panicking. I'm a little bit, grumpy right now. I'm going to acknowledge that. And after we acknowledge it, we can do something about it. So in that case, and what I did last night, and what I would always recommend is starting a little bit of a practice to anchor your child into sleep, anchor your child into a regulated state so that then they can feel safe, get into a parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system state and fall asleep. So, that's an important thing to do. The easiest one to do is a breathing practice. And I don't do anything in particular, there's so many different practices and we can mention some later, but the one that I usually just go to is pretend I'm sleeping. I just make my body limp. I might do a body scan and make my feet limp, my legs limp, my chest, my arms, my face, all my muscles, breathing into them and relaxing them, and just get into really slow rhythmic breathing. That usually does the trick, both to get me into that state that my son's going to pick up on and getting him into a sleep state. What is your trick, Rocío? What do you do?
I was going to tell you exactly that. And from yesterday too, because, my child took a little while yesterday. And I was just tired, I just wanted to go to bed. And after 20 minutes, he's like, Mama, our baby's made. I'm like, no, we're not having this conversation.
And I'm always I will answer your question tomorrow.
Anyways, yeah. So I was like, oh my God. So I was self-aware, as you're saying, Greer, that I was starting to get impatient. So I just stopped myself. I said, okay, well, it's bedtime. He will sleep at some point. And so what are my tools that I have? So I did anchor him with a left nostril breathing practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I told him, let's breathe through your left nostril, and I explained why this is how your brain gets into calm state to fall asleep. If you breathe in and out through your left nostril like this, and I show him, and we did 10 breathings. And then I did a little bit of massage on his feet and he fell asleep. So there you go.
Beautiful. Yeah. There's so many ways, right? And we have to really know our kids to know what's going to work.
Yeah. And left nostril breathing works because that's the breathing that puts you into parasympathetic state. If you close your right nostril and breathe to your left, that brings you into parasympathetic state, which is perfect for falling asleep.
I love it. I've been doing when I want to look at my phone lately, which is my goal is to stop for non-work purposes, obviously. I just try to do alternate nostril breathing.
Oh, I love that.
Because I'm obviously I need a brain break. I'm reaching for my phone. Then I'm going to turn away from it and just do some, alternate nostril breathing. It's a really nice way to it's a rejuvenating practice, I think, the alternate nostril. It's sort of restful and rejuvenating. So that's been working for the past couple of days.
Amazing.
Yeah. All right. So let's, go over the steps again. Our first was what we mentioned is emotional awareness. And if you're at the beginning of this right now, I think the best way to start is to just sort of check in with yourself regularly. Some people like to set an alarm in their phone for, 3 or 4 times of the day. And when the alarm goes off, they, close their eyes and check in. And they're like, what's my level of stress right now? What emotions might I be feeling right now? And that can just start to, begin a process of being more aware of your states, right? You can also be aware when you're about to snap, right? Like when you're going to yell, when you're going to be reactive. It's nice to catch those a little bit earlier than when you're going to explode. But when you're beginning self-awareness, this emotional awareness, you might catch yourself in some of those moments and give yourself a timeout to, or a time in, I should say, to regulate yourself, right? And then I think the breathing techniques are great, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think they're the easiest way. And, it's right there. Like, I don't know who am I quoting here, but this person said, we're breathing anyway, so might as well use it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that works both ways, right? It's like, well, I'm breathing anyway. Why do I have to do any special breathing? But when you do, you will be very surprised at the power of your breath. It's remarkable.
I find it so amazing that we have this autonomic nervous system. It's called an autonomic nervous system because it works by itself unconsciously, right? We don't have to think about it, but we can actually control it with breathing. Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible. Incredible. I remember where I was when the animal study came out showing that the breathing rate is directly connected to our emotional brain. So when we're shallow breathing and quickly into our chest, like that is activating fearful and reactive parts of our brain. And, some of the people I work with have only done chest breathing for most of their lives. But when we take long and slow breaths into our belly, that's connected to our rest and digest centers of our brain and our autonomic nervous system. So there is a real neuroscience link there. Yeah. And not just that, when we look at long-term studies where people practice breathing for long periods of time, many areas of their brain show huge changes, big changes in neuroplasticity that we can measure with our very crude brain scanning instruments, which means that's a lot of change that has to happen in order for the instruments we have to actually detect these changes. It's pretty incredible.
It is.
It's great. Do you want to share one breathing technique with everyone before we move on?
Yeah. So one that is very effective is when your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, because that also puts you automatically into parasympathetic state when you exhale longer. So you can do the count. You can do a inhale by a count of 4, then pause by 7, and exhale by 8, and do this like 4 times. But you can also find your own rhythm, right? As long as your exhalation is longer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could do it for a second. Should we do a couple breaths?
Yeah, everybody listening. Let's do it.
Why not? Yeah. So we'll do an inhale, a quick, should we do the 4, 7, 8 breath? Yeah. It's a bit challenging, but if you need to shorten the times, that's totally fine. So I'll guide us. So let's do an inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you just keep going and repeating that. How do you feel after 1 breath or 2 breaths?
You
looked very good. You look calm.
I'm used to doing it too, so I could reach like the 8. But yeah, like we said, you can find your own rhythm. And
it could be inhale for 2, hold for 2, exhale for 4. Right? Yeah. Try it today. Amazing. Well, I think we learned a lot today, which is pretty incredible. I think maybe the last thing we should touch on before we sign off is repair. Because sometimes we don't catch ourselves, right? And sometimes we are in a mood for a while around our kid, or bedtime really doesn't go well. And that's when repair comes in. And I always want parents to remember repair is always there. You can just take it off the shelf and use it anytime. Don't ever hesitate to repair. As soon as you notice it's needed, offer it, right? And babies kind of need some ruptures and repairs in their relationship in order for the nervous system to develop, that stress system to develop well, and their relationships, their kind of map of how relationships work to be grown in an authentic way. So we don't have to have any shame about being reactive or being in a bad mood, around our kids, as much as we, is authentic to us. But we also do want to take responsibility for those as much as we can. And we want to be able to offer some repair. Do you want to give us an example of how that might work, Rocío? Like maybe the example is like you were a little bit grumpy at bedtime and then it's the next morning. Like how would you repair that with a baby or a child?
I would just acknowledge it. Like, mommy was feeling a bit grumpy last night. I was really tired, but this wasn't about you. It was just, I was feeling like this. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for speaking to you like that. And that's it. We don't have to go on and on about it. It can be very short. And what I find is my kids instantly, that's all they needed, They just know. And they do it now too. They're older, and I never ask them to apologize for anything. If they are rude to me, we all have our moods. Mm-hmm. They eventually come and ask and apologize without me telling them anything. So, and I think it's because it has been modeled to them.
100%. Yeah. I think there's so few of us who are parenting right now who had repair. I remember one very salient memory of a repair that I was offered to me at one point. And that stands out because it was like, whoa, that was huge. But for our kids, like this might be falling under that you're spoiling your kids kind of mythology, right? Like you're the adult, you're in charge. Why would you apologize? Right. And so, let's spoil our babies with repair, just 100%. Go for it. And I see the same with my son. He fully understands this, and some people I've also seen modeled like have an MO of kind of like someone crosses you have a conflict with someone and you just leave the relationship and the relationship, right? Repair allows us to model. We all make mistakes. We all have bad moods, and we can come back regulated and calm with curiosity and be able to apologize. And it goes a long way, and it can be quick and short, just like you said. So.
Oh, and I just, something came up that I want to share. My children apologize to each other. Like that's because they're always fighting. Yeah. But the other day, like this was like 2 days ago, my 6-year-old came in and he's learning to write, right? And he's like, Mom, how you write? I'm sorry. And like he was writing a sorry note to my 11-year-old.
Amazing.
And I thought that was so sweet.
That's incredible. I mean, what another incredible outcome of spoiling your baby by repair and apologizing. They end up healing their own relationships, their important relationships, right?
Yeah,
and making your life a little bit easier too.
I was going to say that I didn't have to intervene, like, because for me, for my personal journey, this is hard for me when my 2 kids fight. But yeah, my 6-year-old just was like, he wrote, I remember now the note, he said, I'm sorry for being rambunctious. Because he was me, and he was getting my other son was playing the piano and was getting really like, come on, stop like doing this. And and then he went and made that little note.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love it. What a great way to end today. So everyone, thank you so much for being here. Remember to look at the link to find out about our retreat. We have over 20 speakers coming to build on, the topics we, set out today, but to really help you nourish yourself as a mother during the years when you have a baby and beyond. It's so important. So make sure you check that out. Follow us on Instagram and share this with a friend. See you next time.